Hi everybody, it's Miss Kokenauer, and this is your next video for your next project in the second week of the 6 weeks. We are going to be focusing on texture. Now remember, texture is how something feels, but in art, we often can't feel the artwork. We have to make it look the way it should feel. So there's a lot of little fun things that we can do to make that happen. So with this project, you're going to have, I said two different options, but technically you have three. You can do your hand, you can do different objects, or you can do a scene with different textures in that scene. So I'm going to show you a few examples of how to get started, but a few examples of each one of those. So here we go. Let's say hello to our assistant, Miss Scarlett here. She's not going to say hello. She's being lazy today. But anyway, here we go. Let me get my camera situated. Okay, so we're going to start with your hand. All you're doing here is drawing your hand. Now, some people have a hard time doing it. So basically what you're doing is you're putting down your non-dominant hand, and you got to hold it pretty tightly, and you're holding down the paper at the same time, okay? So what you're doing is you're going to take it really slow and drawing very, very lightly. So you're going to go all the way around, and if you mess up, it's okay because you're drawing lightly and you can kind of edit it as you go. Also, since we are going back and adding textures, you're going to be kind of moving your fingers around anyway and editing those, so it's okay to go back. Okay, so there's your hand. And for this project, what you can do is we're going to be doing textures for each one of your fingers. There are some pictures in the assignment itself and attached that show two examples of the hand with textured fingers. So with this, there's also texture examples that are attached as well that you can look off of. But think of things that are like wood, brick, shiny metal kind of stuff, furry, different things that you can feel. So with our finger, let's just go with like a wood grain. And a wood grain is kind of just little lines, and they are up and down, right? They're not straight. You don't need a ruler. Some of them even twist, kind of like little knots in there, and you can kind of make little movements here and go around, right? So stuff like this would be an example for wood, okay? Another example could be brick, right? Brick, or even cement or stuff like that. They're made out of boxes, right? So we do need to get a little bit more straight than this, but you have to remember that bricks normally aren't sharp sides and stuff like that. So that's when we can go back and add the texture to make them rounded, make them kind of crumbly, things like that. Also, you have to think of the in between the bricks are cement. So it can be kind of goopy. It just depends what you want. Now, remember what I said with your fingers, you can go back and kind of edit the sides to make it more not as a finger, right? Make it more like that. So with bricks, normally what you want to do is make a line, and then on the next one, it's kind of like this. They're off center. They're not like right on top of each other. They're back and forth. So what I like to do is kind of make my bricks as I go. And then that's when you can kind of go back and add in the, let's see here, yeah, kind kind of add in the differences in edges and lines like that. Now remember, when you go back to add in all this stuff, you can go back and erase these lines of the finger and the original lines that you did. You can even kind of round them out. You could make your lines inside kind of thicker. Like I said, that's cement, so sometimes it's not always the neatest, right? You can kind of go in and make it thicker and uneven. You can make one kind of go off the side a little bit farther than the others. Okay, and like I said, you can kind of round them off if you want. Instead of brick, what you could do is make stones. And stones would be kind of the same situation, but they are more rounded. Scarlett decided she wanted to play right now. You can kind of make them rounded. And that's when you can kind of fill in those sections here. Right, it doesn't have to be anything in particular. And you could even kind of shade in your bricks a little bit. Some of them have little patches of discoloration there, kind of in the corner. Like I said, sometimes the bricks are kind of crumbly and falling apart. You could do it that way, right? You're taking your time on like smaller details, okay? So as you make those details, that's when they really make it pop, okay? So I'm kind of speeding through these, but go back and even with your wood, you know, go back and kind of make some stripes thicker. Maybe make it thicker on one side to kind of change the coloration of it. Because most of this stuff is from nature, so you know it's not perfect anyway, right? It's not lined up perfect, it's not colored perfect, and that's what makes it unique, okay? So those are just a couple little tricks. Play around with different textures that you like. Let's think of, let's do a furry one. Furry, hairy, any kind of thing like that, fuzzy, right? And fur or grass or anything like that, it's all about the direction that your hair is growing, right? So if it's from the ground, it's kind of going this way, right? And then you could kind of make it go around, all that good stuff. It just depends how your fur or grass or whatever you're choosing goes that way. So with our finger, let's say he is a dog. Okay, we're gonna do Scarlett. But Scarlett has short hair. We're gonna pretend she has a long furry hair, kind of like a sheepdog. And my fur is going to kind of come from the middle here. Okay, so I'm drawing just a little line for me so I can know where to go. And notice I'm not scribbling. Each mark has a purpose, right? So when I'm going this way, I'm gonna keep going. I don't necessarily have to go all the way back to the middle, but I'm making them in that direction, okay? And you're filling it all in. You don't want a lot of white left over. If you do add color, which you can if you want to, but say if this is going to be brown, what you would do is you would add, you know, you might want to start with a lighter brown, and then you would go back in with some dark highlights. You could even do kind of some white and some lighter colors to make some highlights. On the other side, you're going to go the opposite direction, but you're doing that same motion, okay? Right, so I did the middle there. I'm gonna keep going. And as you can see, I'm going over top of my outline of the finger, because when you think of furry things or hairy things, you don't see that outline because you see all these little tiny hairs. So I'm going just back and forth. I'm going in that full direction. Okay. Can go back and kind of add in where I need to. Right? That even kind of looks like a feather. The feathers feel that way too with the middle. Feathers aren't usually smaller. They're usually kind of bigger strokes to kind of fill the whole feather like shape here. So you're not, so the difference is in fur or hair, you're kind of making different marks like that. With feathers, you're kind of going, you know, farther, but they're in the same direction. Or even in leaves as well, you might not be making as many lines, but with leaves, you're going from that middle stem, kind of like that. Okay, so, you know, just think about what kind of textures you like. With this is kind of straight, coarse hair. We can think of longer hair. We can kind of curve it. And basically you're just layering it on top of each other. You can even kind of do curly cues, but remember, you're not doing, you know, that kind of motion. Each motion has a purpose, right? So you're taking your time and you're not just scribbling, you're actually making layers upon layers. Okay? And that kind of looks a little weird. There we go. I think if we add a little bit more to it, and you could kind of make it bumpy and cloudy on the sides here. And remember, you can always go back and add in kind of darker colors. Remember your values and your shading. Without even using colors, you can do that with your pencil itself, just by pressing down harder. Okay, so this is what I mean about texture, is that you're making it look like something else. Sand is pretty cool, but sand takes a little while because it's kind of like, it goes along with pointillism. And so if you think about sand, it's little tiny grains, right? So with that, it's a little easier to do it with like a pen or a marker, but you can accomplish it with pencil as well. But you're doing kind of like little sections of dots. And again, each dot is supposed to be not meaningful, but purposeful, right? So you're not just going dot, 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 dot. You are kind of dotting it in to make it look grainy. So the sand will take a little bit longer with a pencil, but you could even do parts, sections if you'd like. Okay, so as you can see, it's going to take a little while, but it makes this nice grainy section. Other than that, there are plenty of decisions to make with your textures. You can even do, they remind me of kind of like Zentangles a little bit with patterns, but you could do a braid, right? A braid, if you think about, let's see here, it's almost like a diamond kind of shape, but you would go in with that direction, okay? So it doesn't really matter what you decide to do. as long as you have all 5, okay? So you need to do 5 different ones. Play around, I'm even thinking about fish or lizards or something like that, right? You kind of have these scales that are kind of round, right? But they're not quite circles, and they're kind of, let's see here. It kind of works better if you do it like with the bricks where you're kind of alternating, right? Alternating the spacing. So you can kind of do that, and like I said, you round it off, go past your design with your hand, and then you can kind of shade in this section or shade however you want it up at the top to make them look more like individual scales. So there's all kinds of fun things that you can choose with your textures. So this is your first example. You can do your hand, and all I'm asking for is each finger be a different texture, okay? So make sure that you fill all your fingers all the way to the palm of your hand, right? All this section needs to be filled in. If you decide you want to do something fun in the middle or even on your wrist, that's fine too. You don't necessarily need a background because your textures do take a little bit longer to do because you are adding your details and you're taking your time to be nice and neat. So anyway, that is your first project example. The next videos we will show you the different ones. Okay.